Ladies and gentlemen, there is a change in our agenda. We have been informed that the problem connection that we faced before regarding the presentation of Mr. Sergei Ivanov via Zoom has been solved. So we will try again to connect with Mr. Sergei. I remind you that he is a co-founder and CEO of ArgoSmart to present a startup application for the real estate industry. Mr. Ivanov?
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Hello, seems like yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Cyprus, from Limassol. First of all, thank you very much for inviting to present here. That's a real honor. And actually, I would like to thank the technical issue for giving me an opportunity to listen for the panel about the taxes, which we had before. And it showed me a lot that taxes, investments, real estate, and the Green Deal are connected a little bit more than we initially think. Some of the ideas or incentives, which Dr. Mavraganis was mentioning, are very relevant to the topic, what I'm about to discuss today. And the topic about the golden visa, which was mentioned as well during the previous panel, is relevant to us because one of our clients actually is a Chinese company who is managing real estate investments in Greece for Chinese investors who obtain golden visas. So we're quite aware of the situation. But let's go to the presentation itself. So today, I would like to talk about the impact of the Green Deal on real estate industry. And to start with, I wanted to talk about some recent news which we had here in Cyprus during the last months. If we Google a bit what's happening in the media in Cyprus, we can see some, from the very first side, random highlights like ambitious tax reform in Cyprus, about which you are for sure much more aware than I am. Then in the beginning of the month, government was saying that it's going to be application of the green tax from the beginning of the next year, or basically that's the carbon tax we're talking about. Then there was some news about Ernst & Young holding some trainings about corporate social responsibility reporting, etc. Then there was some news about subsidies, incentives for solar panels, and many more things, kind of irrelevant from the very beginning. But if we ask ourselves, what does this news have in common? And I think the answer is obvious for you or for the participants of this event. That's the European Green Deal, and the largest stimulus package ever, which we are experiencing. But if we're talking about the European Green Deal, about taxes, about energy, some people might ask, what about real estate then? How is it connected? And to answer this question and to understand it more thoroughly, we have to do some homework and to break down the issue. So the European Green Deal from the real estate perspectives looks as following. On the concept level, it says at least 55% less net greenhouse gas emission by 2030. Sounds like a good thing, but where the real problem is? The real problem is that the buildings are responsible for about 40% of energy consumption and about 36% of carbon emissions in the European Union. So the whole concept of the Green Deal, if we take a look at it from the real estate perspective, means the disruption of the real estate industry in the European Union itself. And that's quite a challenge. And that's quite a difficult challenge, quite an expensive one. That's why from the resources level, 1/3 of the 1.8 trillion investments from the recovery plan and the EU's 7-year budget will finance the European Green Deal. So that's why there are so many different incentives which are helping to push the things forward. And how it's going to be happening? Who's going to be advising on these? Who's going to be checking this? On the reporting and guidance level, there's green accounting and corporate sustainability reporting, which is going to be obligatory from the next year. And from what we understand, speaking with people and companies on the ground, quite often companies have no idea what it really means. And that's why financial advising companies or consultants are crucial players to push this concept forward. And on the implementation level, what's going to be happening? Fossil fuels will, of course, have to go into renewable energy. That's on the energy level. But on the real estate level, because that's where the problem is as well, energy efficient new real estate development must be happening. And obligatory renovation for existing buildings is already happening or have to happen. So if we take a look at this, let's say, pyramid from the actors, from the player perspective, we can see that this sophisticated issue must be solved with different players involved in the same time. On the concept level, of course, that's the European Union itself. On the problem level, it's 160 trillion asset class in the European Union only. The biggest asset class in the world actually is the foundational issue of the problem which we have to solve altogether. And that's why on the resource level, European Union, local governments and private sector have to collaborate and invest into this change. And when we're talking about the change and providing resources like subsidies, incentives, financial services and consultants basically are acting as providers and educators to the private sector and explaining how it's going to be working. On the implementation level, energy companies, real estate players, asset managers, and PropTech companies like ours are working together to make it done. Let's take a look at a real life example, not only talking about high level things. And just remembering about the news from the very first slide about the green tax to be implemented in Cyprus. We studied this question on the European Union level, and we can see on the map that carbon tax in Europe is already happening. And in Greece and Cyprus, it wasn't implemented yet, but from what we see, this will happen because that's a mandatory requirement from the European Union for the countries to get the subsidies. We all know aware of it. And from what we understand, the companies for whom this tax will be as a surprise, they will be having extra burdens. But from the global picture perspective, from the European level perspective, it's already happening. It's already working in France, Spain, Germany, northern countries, and for sure, it's going to be coming to the southern Europe as well. Why it's important? If we take a look at electricity production in Europe by source, we can see that Greece and Cyprus are still not green enough yet. If Greece is getting about 50% of the energy from renewables, in Cyprus, about 80% of the energy is still coming from the fossil fuels. It means if the carbon tax is in place, it will affect energy consumers the most because of the draft we see on the table. And we did some internal calculations, and we realized that introduction of a carbon tax in Cyprus will increase electricity bills by from 2 to 8%, depending on how much this tax is going to be. Who is going to pay for this? Is it going to be extra burden for real estate owners? If that's the companies who are not doing anything into sustainable transition, for sure, yes, they will have to pay for these extra taxes. But if the companies are knowing how to use the subsidies, how to use new technologies, how to go sustainable, that's going to be actually an extra incentive to go green. And the summary, in a way, on a nutshell, of this concept from our perspective, from the real estate player perspective, I should say that transition to sustainable real estate is possible if only all the players team up to make it work. If the governments are providing subsidies properly, if consultants, tax advisors, financial advisors are explaining to the real estate owners and managers what does it mean and how they have to develop their sustainable strategy to go green, and if some proptech companies or digital companies are providing proper tools to cope with these challenges, that might work. And using this opportunity, of course, I would like to say, how can we help? Companies like ours, developing all-in-one solutions to make real estate portfolio management smart. So there are digital platforms which are helping different asset managers, banks, enterprise companies to turn all their portfolio management into data-driven decision management, to see how much electricity they're consuming, installing smart meters, smart water meters, smart AC management systems, to have dashboards and panels to see what's really happening with their assets, to understand how much carbon they are basically producing, to understand how much tax burden they will have to become more efficient, and that's the only way. We're already working with some big companies, and actually Wailing Apartments are our recent client from Greece. The guys who are working with Chinese investors. The 360 tower in Nicosia, which was developed by Siphon and managed via our product, is our client as well. And we're happy to help the real estate industry in Cyprus and Greece and the European Union to go smoothly through the transition, which is inevitably will be happening. That's the main points I want to discuss. And just to say one more time, because this panel was about taxes, but from what we see, taxes, investments, sustainable development, and real estate as the biggest asset class in the world are much more connected than we sometimes think. And we have to strategically collaborate to face all the challenges properly. Thank you very much. If that's technically possible, I'll be happy to answer your questions. If it's not, feel free to contact me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Ivanov. Thank you.